Yo, what's up guys, Alpha, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to get rank 3 with on the arena ladder. As you can see from the untapped screenshot, I'm currently 27-6 with this deck, so it's been performing really well for me. And now before I get into it, there's going to be an MTG zone link down in the description. If you click on that, I'll have the deck list there that you can import into arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. And I'm also in the process of writing a full text article about this deck for MTG zone that will have more details, a full sideboard guide, how I change the deck for best of one, and some tips and tricks to help you play the deck as well. So as soon as that's finished and up, I'll link that down in the description as well. But anyway, with that all out of the way, this is my mono green turbo Henge deck in Explorer. So as the name suggests, this is a mono green aggressive deck that is built around trying to get the Great Henge into play as quickly as possible. So this is the namesake card of the deck. It's a 9 mana legendary artifact, and it costs X to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. And then once it's in play, we can tap it to add 2 green mana, you gain 2 life, and whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. So this is such a powerful card in this deck, because the strong thing about Henge in this particular shell is the rest of the deck is basically just a mono green aggressive deck. So you're trying to get underneath what the opponent's doing, get your creatures into play as quickly as possible, and just try and close the game out. But because we have 4 great Henge and it's a really important part of our game plan, the Henge also allows you to go over the top of whatever the opponent's doing, because once this is in play, all of your creatures can trip, all of them enter with a +1/+1 counter. So this deck acts on 2 completely different axes, where the opponent has to deal with our fast aggressive creatures, and then if we ever get to resolve Great Henge, then we just run away with the game in the late game as well. So this deck has a very strong early game aggressive game plan and a very strong late game card advantage game plan because of the Great Henge. So how are we getting Great Henge into play as quickly as possible? Well, the key is to have 3 mana creatures that have 5 power, because if we spend 3 mana to put a 5 power creature into play, then the Great Henge only costs 4 mana, so then on our next turn, if we hit our 4th land drop, we can immediately play the Great Henge. So this enables us to very consistently play the Great Henge on turn 4. So if we have a look at all the 3 drops we've got in the deck, we've got Lovestruck Beast, which has 5 power, Rodus, which has 5 power, Kazandu Mammoth only has 3 power, but it has a landfall ability that whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, it gets +2/+2, which increases its power up to 5, so that then still enables the Great Henge on turn 4. And we've got Steelleaf Champion, which has 5 power as well. So the deck is built in a very specific way so that all of our 3 drops then enable us to play the Great Henge on turn 4. Then additionally, we also have 4 Elvish Mystic, 4 Llanowar Elves, which enable us to play the Great Henge on turn 3 fairly consistently, assuming our Mana Dork lives. And this is probably the deck that benefits the most from Elvish Mystic, because I was working on this deck before the release of Elvish Mystic, and it really felt like it was missing another 1-drop. Having Llanowar Elves in your opening hand was so strong, and so having 8 of these style of effects is really powerful, because we can play one of our Mana Dorks on turn 1, then one of our 3 drops on turn 2, and then the Great Henge still is reduced to 4 mana. If we hit our 3rd land drop and one of our Mana Dorks lives, then we can play the Great Henge on turn 3, which is so powerful. That's almost always going to win you the game immediately. And on top of that, one of the big weaknesses of running 4 Elvish Mystic, 4 Llanowar Elves in decks is that they're pretty bad top decks later in the game. But the great thing about this deck is, if we have Great Henge in play, it's not actually a bad top deck at all, because it will just enter play as a 2/2 and draw us a card as well. So while most decks that are running 4 Elvish Mystic, 4 Llanowar Elves really have a drawback of drawing them later in the game, because we have the Great Henge in the deck and our whole game plan is warped around trying to get it into play as quickly as possible, we really don't mind drawing these later in the game, because they'll just cycle and draw us an extra card. So we'll have a look at these specific cards in the deck. Obviously, like I said, we've got 4 Elvish Mystic, 4 Llanowar Elves. This is great to enable Great Henge on turn 3, but it's also just great at ramping into these really powerful creatures on turn 2, which, even if we don't have the Great Henge, can often just run the opponent down and kill them before the opponent gets the chance to stabilise. And then at the 2-drop slot, we've got 4 copies of Scavenging Ooze. So this is really great as just a generically powerful card that is also very strong against certain cards in the metagame. So Graveyard Hate in the main deck is very powerful against decks like Greasefang, Arclight Phoenix, Rakdos midrange decks running stuff like Croxer as well. And the fact that this is just very strong as creatures trade off in combat, you know, playing this later in the game is very powerful, because we can just exile stuff from the graveyard, gain life, and make Ooze really big. So Ooze is really great as just a value creature that provides some life gain and some additional Graveyard Hate as well. And we've also got 4 copies of Werewolf Pack Leader, so it's a 2 mana 3/3, and whenever it attacks, if we attacked with creatures with total power 6 or greater this combat, draw a card, and then we can pay 4 to turn it into a 5/3 with trample until the end of the turn. So this is just a really, really powerful card on rate. 2 mana 3/3 that draws us a card when we start attacking with other creatures is so powerful at just keeping the cards flowing. And the activated ability on this is really nice as well at just forcing through damage. You know, one of the weaknesses of running mono green as opposed to something like Gruul where you have access to Embercleave is the deck can be kind of vulnerable to chump blockers with certain creatures. So the fact that we have a way to turn this into a trampler is really good at forcing damage through against decks that are good at chump blocking, like sacrifice decks that are running Cat Oven. We can force through damage by turning this into a trampler, which is really nice. So Werewolf Pack Leader, very nice at just providing some card advantage and just being an incredibly good creature for 2 mana on the rate we get. Then at the 3-drop slot, like I said, all of these creatures are here because they're just good in their own right, but they also enable us to play the Great Henge on turn 3 or 4. So starting off with Lovestruck Beast, this is an adventure card, so the sorcery, we can pay 1 mana and create a 1/1 human creature token, and then when we play it as the Lovestruck Beast side, it can't attack unless we control a 1/1, so the idea generally with this is we play the sorcery side first and then the Lovestruck Beast. We don't always do that though, especially if we have Llanowar Elves and Great Henge in our hand. Oftentimes we want to play our Mana Dork, then play the Lovestruck Beast on turn 2 to enable Great Henge on turn 3, and because our Elvish Mystic and Llanowar Elves are 1/1s anyway, we can still attack with the Lovestruck Beast because of the Elvish Mystic and Llanowar Elves. And this is another advantage of running this deck with Elvish Mystic now as well. We have a much higher density of 1/1s that we can just play normally, so quite often times if you're playing against a deck like Rakdos Midrange, they will often use something like Bonecrusher Giant to take out the 1/1 that we create off this, but since we have a high density of Mystic and Llanowar Elves, we can just turn the Lovestruck Beast back onto being able to attack because we have these 1/1s that we can just draw and cast later in the game, which is really nice. But in general, Lovestruck Beast is just great because when we don't have our Elvish Mystic or Llanowar Elves, it gives us another play to do on turn 1 because we can just create a token, and then the 3 mana 5/5, both on defense and when we can attack with it, is really powerful on rate as well. And we've got 2 copies of Ronus the Indomitable, 3 mana 5/5 with Death Touch and Indestructible, but it can't attack or block unless we control another creature with power 4 or greater, and then we can pump 3 mana into it to give another target creature +2/+0 and trample until the end of turn. So this is a really, really powerful card, mainly against other creature decks, but just in general it's very powerful, especially in this deck because we have so many creatures that have power 4 or greater. You know, all of our other 3-drops turn this on. Werewolf Pack Leader, if we get a counter off the Great Henge, turns it on, and we can obviously pump our smaller creatures in order to get them to above 4 power so it can attack. But like I said, this is very, very strong against other creature decks. If this can block, it basically just stops the opponent from attacking entirely because it will just trade off with whatever it blocks and the opponent isn't able to kill it unless they have an exile effect. Even against a deck like Control, this is very powerful because it survives stuff like Supreme Verdict, which is really nice. So Ronus, incredibly strong card. I'm only running 2 copies because there is, space in the deck is kind of tight and it's legendary, so you don't really want to be drawing this in multiples. You know, like I said, it's very hard to kill unless the opponent has an exile effect, so if you do draw a second copy, it does kind of sit in your hands. So 2 copies has felt nice overall, and the other great thing about Ronus is that it also forces trample damage through on our other creatures. So against decks like Sacrifice or any other deck that is good at producing chump blockers, if we've built up a wide board, Ronus can often just force lethal through because we can attack with everything, and then even if the opponent does chump block, we can start giving our bigger creatures trample and force through a bunch of damage that way as well. So Ronus, really powerful card, but I wouldn't run more than 2 copies because it's legendary and hard to kill. Then we've got 4 copies of Kasandi Mammoth. So like I said, this is another card that is mainly here to enable the Great Henge, but the really nice thing about Kasandi Mammoth is it can also be played as a land, which is really huge because we're only playing 20 lands in this deck, but with Kasandi Mammoth we are essentially running 24. Now it does kind of suck that it enters as a tap land, but with our curve, you know, we don't have that many 2-drops. Sometimes we don't have a turn 1 play either, so we usually, if we do need to play this as a land, have somewhere along the curve to play it. And in general, this just has a bunch of great utility because we're also running Collected Company, which requires a high density of creatures to enable it, especially post-sideboard when we side out creatures for non-creatures. It's very important that we have enough creatures in general. And because we can run Kasandi Mammoth as one of our creatures, we have 30 creatures in the main deck, while still having a decent number of lands as well, because Kasandi Mammoth can be played as a land. So the utility on this, as another creature that we can hit off company and enable Great Henge on turn 3 or 4, that can also be played as a land, and even when it's played as a creature it's decent. You know, if we play a land for turn it goes up to a 5/5, which is decent stats for a 3 mana creature. So Kasandi Mammoth, really nice at enabling us to not be running too many lands whilst avoiding getting mana screwed as well. And the other great thing about Mammoth is with the Great Henge, you don't want to be running too many lands either, because as you play creatures, you know, you're going to be drawing a bunch of cards, and the Great Henge obviously isn't effective if you just draw lands, and if you're running a high land count, you can be left in spots where you just draw lands and you can't really utilise the Great Henge. So Kazandi Mammoth allowing us to run a slightly lower lands count because it's a creature that can also be played as a land works very nicely with the Great Henge as well as Collected Company as well. And then we've also got 4 copies of Steelleaf Champion, 3 mana 5/4, and it can't be blocked with creatures. Sorry, it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. So this is potentially one of the most powerful three drops in the entire deck. 5/4 for 3 mana that doesn't have the same drawback as Lovestruck Beast. It can attack whenever, and it also can't be blocked by smaller creatures, which is huge. You know, one of the weaknesses of mono green, like I said, is it's not as good at forcing damage through, but Steelleaf Champion is naturally good against smaller chump blockers. You know, against Sacrifice, they can't just block it with Cauldron Familiar. So getting this down, especially on turn 2 after a turn 1 Elvish Mystic or Llanowar Elves, even if we don't have Collected Company or the Great Henge, is just a great way to force through a ton of damage. So Steelleaf Champion, very, very powerful card. One card that I do want to address, because it is a very powerful card in mono green that a lot of the Stompy decks are playing right now, is Old Growth Troll, if it'll load. So this is a very, very powerful card, and if I wasn't going for a Turbo Henge build, I would definitely be running this creature, but because this deck is built around trying to get the Great Henge out, having 4 power is a real issue, because if you play this on turn 3, the Great Henge then costs 5 mana, which delays your curve out by an extra turn. So if Old Growth Troll had 5 power, I would absolutely be running it. I mean, it would probably be too powerful at that point, but because this deck is built around getting the Great Henge into play as quickly as possible, Old Growth Troll not having 5 power sadly meant that it didn't make the cut, unfortunately. Then the other main powerful card that we've got in the deck alongside the Great Henge's top end is Collected Company. So this is a 4 mana instant. Look at the top 6 cards of your library, put 2 creatures with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So this is obviously an incredibly powerful card in this deck because we have so many really good 3 drops that we want to hit. Even if we don't hit just 3 drops, we also have Pack Leader and Scavenging Ooze that are both decent cards to hit later in the game as well, because Pack Leader can draw us cards, and Scavenging Ooze is actually a card that probably gets better as you play it later. You know, sometimes it's not great to just play it out on turn 2 because it dies to a lot of stuff like Bone Crusher Giants. So outside of Elvish Mystic and Llanowar Elves, we're very happy to hit any of the top end of our deck. And the other nice thing about Collected Company in this build is, since we have 30 creatures, you know, the minimum that you really need to make Company consistent is 24, so we can afford to be bringing in a lot of non-creature stuff from the sideboard and still have Collected Company work, which is really nice. And then the last non-land that we've got in the deck to round it out is 2 copies of Primal Might. So this is our main interaction in the deck. So sorcery, it costs green and X, and target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn, and then it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So this is really powerful. I mean, obviously the downside of running mono green is your removal is reliant on fight effects, which does make you vulnerable to single target removal, because if you use Primal Might and the opponent kills the creature that you're targeting, then it fizzles the effect. But that is one of the big weaknesses of green. That's how green removal has always worked, and this is definitely the best of the green effects, because not only does it work as a fight effect, it also works as a pump effect. So you can often just, if the opponent only has 1 blocker left, pump all of your mana into Primal Might, kill the creature, and then your creature is huge and can force through lethal damage. So Primal Might, definitely the best of the interactive spells, and I felt like it's important to be running a couple of these in the main deck, because there are creatures that we do need to be able to kill. Stuff like Kalitas can be very difficult to beat, so having main deck removal is very important, and we've also got 2 more copies in the sideboard for the matchups where that's important. Then onto the mana base. Like I said, we've only got 20 actual lands in the deck. We can afford to do that because we have the Kazandi Mammoths, and we also have 4 Elvish Mystic, 4 Llanowar Elves, which helps give us mana in the early game as well. So 20 lands has felt like a really good amount. In terms of the lands themselves, we've got 2 Beside You, which is a very powerful utility land that's good at killing artifacts and enchantments for the most part, but you can also take out utility lands as well. I was initially only running 1 of these because there is obviously downside to drawing the second if you need to play it as a land because it's legendary. But I really wanted to be running 2 of these because Fable of the Mirror Breaker specifically can be difficult to beat. You know, I've been in situations against the RB Midrange deck, even when I get out the Great Henge, where it's difficult for us to beat Reflection of Kiki-Jiki that's copying something like a Bloodtithe Harvester every turn to kill one of our creatures. And so having Beside You as a way to kill Reflection of Kiki-Jiki before it starts copying stuff is really nice. And in general, you know, it's only come up a couple of times where I've drawn the legendary land, and just having the utility of being able to kill artifacts and enchantments, stuff like Witch's Oven as well, being able to kill the Great Henge in the mirror match, like, you know, there's a ton of utility for this. So I've really liked running the 2 copies just to give us extra outs to stuff like Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. And then we've also got 2 copies of Hashep Oasis. So this is originally a card that I was running 4 of because I felt like you know, mono green doesn't have that great utility lands. I wanted to maximise the utility lands that we had available to us. So this is a land, you can tap it to add colourless for no cost. You can tap it to add green, but you have to pay a life, and then you can pay 3 and tap it to sacrifice a desert, and then target creature gets +3/+3 until the end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. So the effect on this is really nice, because there are a lot of spots where to get lethal, you know, say the opponent has just creatures with power 2 or less, you can pump up a Steel Leaf Champion just to get the last few points of damage. If the opponent has a wider board, we can pump stuff like Llanowar Elves or Elvish Mystic to be able to go wide with an attack. So the ability on this does come up a fair amount. But since we're also running a lot of cards that have double or triple green in the casting cost, stuff like Werewolf Pack Leader and Steel Leaf Champion, the amount of life you have to pay on this really starts to add up if you're running a lot of copies. So like I said, I started with 4, but in matchups where your life total does matter, it did really cost a lot, especially if you have like a couple of Hashep Oasis in your first 2 or 3 lands. You end up having to pay quite a lot of life. So I moved it down to 3 copies, and I still felt like I was paying too much life and not getting as much utility off it. And then 2 copies has felt like a really good amount. I feel like going down to 1, you don't really get the effect enough. But running 2 copies, you usually just draw 1 when you do. And most of the time, you don't end up paying that much life. So 2 overall has felt like the kind of sweet spot for this card. And when you activate it, it has won me a few games every now and then. So I do think it's important to be running at least a couple of copies of this. And then the last utility land we got in the deck is 2 copies of Lair of the Hydra. So this enters untapped for the first 2 turns of the game, taps to add green, and then we can pay X in green to turn it into an XX green Hydra creature token, still a land, and we can start attacking with this as well. So this is just another great mana sink. I don't like running more than 2 copies of this because we really don't want this entering tapped. You know, if we need to cast like a Steel Leaf Champion, Collector's Company, or Great Henge, having this as the card that we draw and having to enter the play tapped really hurts us, our ability to carve out anyway. But having this as a utility land later in the game to start attacking the opponent, you know, if you're against control and they have to sweep the board, we can often just pump all of our mana into this to attack Planeswalkers or attack them directly. And the other really nice thing about Lair of the Hydra is that we can turn it into a 1/1 to enable Lovestruck Beast to attack as well. That's something that comes up quite a lot, because especially if you have multiple Lovestruck Beasts, the opponent is going to go all out to try and kill the 1/1s that you make off it, or kill your Elvish Mystic or Llanowar Elves to stop them attacking. So the fact that we can just turn Lair of the Hydra into a 1/1 to enable our Lovestruck Beast to attack is another way to force through a bunch of damage. So that's the main deck. It's felt so powerful and so streamlined to me. I think the Great Henge is really difficult for a lot of decks to beat. You know, even a lot of the late game decks can't beat the Great Henge. So the fact that this deck has a very strong early game aggressive game plan, and then you can play the Great Henge later in the game, or I mean pretty early in the game, to go over the top of what the opponent's doing, gives this deck a really, really powerful early game and late game strategy that's very difficult for a lot of decks to beat. Now onto the sideboard, starting off with 3 copies of Shaper's Sanctuary. So this is predominantly here for the Rakdos midrange and control decks. Basically any deck that has a lot of single target removal. This is phenomenal. This is just the best card against the Rakdos midrange deck. I have a really good win rate in that matchup, mainly off the back of Shaper's Sanctuary, because the whole way that they try and beat you is use stuff like Fatal Push, Heartless Act, Noxious Grasp, loads of single target removal to take out your creatures, and if you're drawing a card off every one of those single pieces of removal, you're just going to outgrind them into the late game. Similarly against control, they do have sweepers as well, but they are going to rely on a lot of single target removal, stuff like Wandering Emperor, March of Otherworldly Light, Fateful Absence. This is just really good against the mid-range and control decks that rely on single target removal to interact with your creatures. I've got 2 copies of Cruel Harpooner. So this is predominantly here for the mono blue matchup, which is one of the worst matchups for this deck, unfortunately, because that matchup, you know, most of the time you either want to race, which you can race them if you go first, but you also want to be able to interact with their creatures, and Cruel Harpooner is a great way for us to do that without having to rely on something like Primal Might, which can be countered by Mausoleum Wanderer, can be countered by Spell Pierce as well. So Cruel Harpooner, really good in the mono blue matchup, also very good against Phoenix, so being able to take out stuff like Ledger Shredder, can be useful against the Jan Sacrifice deck, taking out stuff like Korvold. So any deck running flies, this is effective, but I mainly wanted it here as a way to improve the mono blue matchup, which I did find quite tough. Then we've got 2 more copies of Unlicensed Hearse. So this is very good, obviously, in matchups where you want Graveyard Hate, so predominantly here for Greasefang, but also very good against Phoenix. If the opponent's running Crocs or Rakdos midrange, this is also good. Only running 2 copies of Graveyard Hate in the sideboard, because we do have 4 copies of Scavenging Ooze in the main deck, which also acts as Graveyard Hate. But I felt like it was important to have Hearse in addition, because if the opponent has the nut drawing Greasefang and we're going second, even if we have Scavenging Ooze, that's not going to be fast enough, because we play it on turn 2 and then we can't activate it because we don't have any more mana. Then the opponent can just go Greasefang on turn 3. So I felt like Curse is nice, and even outside of being graveyard hate, we can also just turn it into a big creature to attack with later in the game, so I've really liked 2 Hearse in addition to Ooze as extra graveyard hate against decks that are trying to abuse their graveyard. And then we've got 3 copies of Heroic Intervention, so this is here pretty much exclusively for the control matchup, which is quite difficult, mainly because of stuff like, well, Wrath effects basically. And when we board in Shaper's Sanctuary and Heroic Intervention, we can just board out Primal Might and Scavenging Ooze, which aren't really that great in the matchups. And then we have really good protection from single target removal. And then once we've got a big creature or 2 in play, we can just hold up Heroic Intervention. The only real way to fight through that is with a Supreme Verdict. And for the most part, if you Heroic Intervention a Supreme Verdict, since our creatures are so big, that's often going to be good enough to win the game on its own. So Heroic Intervention plus Shaper's Sanctuary gives you sort of protection against the only 2 ways that control really has of interacting with your big creatures. Then we've got 3 copies of Outland Liberator, so this is here obviously as a way to kill artifacts and enchantments, which is very good against sacrifice, being able to take out stuff like Witch's Oven and Trade of Crumbs, but it's also very effective in the Rakdos midrange matchup at taking out Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So depending on the exact build of Rakdos midrange, I like bringing in Outland Liberator as a way to pick off Reflection of Kiki Jiki. But in some matchups, if they're running a high number of Kalitas, you kind of have to run Primal Might instead, so it just depends on their build whether you bring in Liberator or Primal Might against Rakdos midrange. Even outside of that, there are obviously going to be a bunch of other artifacts and enchantments that you need to be able to kill. You know, in the mirror match, if the opponent's also bringing in Great Henge, Outland Liberator is the perfect out to that as well. So just any deck where you want artifact or enchantment removal, this is perfect. And then finally we've got 2 extra copies of Primal Might as additional removal for decks where we need more creature interaction. You know, everything I said about it before. Generally, the big weakness of green is that your interaction isn't that great, but Primal Might is very strong for what it does. It's the best interaction you're going to get in green decks, and it's very effective against other creature decks like humans, mono red, anything where you need extra creature interaction. Primal Might is great. So that's the deck. Like I said, it's been performing really, really well for me, and it's very difficult to attack both sides of the deck. You know, we've got the aggressive game plan and Collected Company and Great Henge at the top end as well to run away with the game in the late game. So this is one of my picks for the strongest decks that I've tried in Explorer for a while. I definitely recommend checking it out if you want. If you've got any questions about the deck at all, drop me a comment below. Next up, I've got gameplay. I've just got 5 matches that I was playing with this deck on the ladder so you guys can see the deck in action. So I hope you enjoy the gameplay. Big up. Okay, sweet. Here we go. Okay, so we're going first here. And we do have quite a lot of lands, but I think we can keep this. You know, having Beside You as a possible way to kill artifacts or enchantments is great, and we can definitely play this Kazandi Mammoth as a creature. And if Elvish Mystic lives here, we can get Steelleaf Champion down on turn 2. So even though we are missing some top end, I think this hand is fast enough that it's worth keeping. Okay, so Fatal Push. Don't draw a 2-drop, but I think that's fine. We have a lot of firepower. You know, we can go Steelleaf Champion, Kazandi Mammoth. So see what the opponent's on here. I imagine, yeah, okay, Rakdos is probably the most popular deck on the ladder right now, so I'm not surprised to see that. Blood Tithe Harvester is fine. Hopefully they don't have Reflection of Kiki Jiki. Ooh, the Great Henge is sick here. So we're definitely going to run out of Steelleaf Champion first here rather than Kazandi Mammoth because it's harder to kill. You know, they could potentially be running stuff like a Braid, which would kill the Kazandi Mammoth, and our creature surviving until next turn is huge because we want to be able to slam Great Henge here if possible. Like I said, you know, Reflection of Fable of the Mirror Breaker can be annoying when combined with Harvester because it gives Rakdos a very good late game, but we do have Beside You as a way to kill Reflection, but we are going to probably need to play that as a land next turn, I imagine, to be able to cast Great Henge, so we'll see what they do here. Okay, so they do Heartless Act, which takes us off Great Henge for another turn, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it does slow them down from developing, so it's not really the end of the world here. Okay, interesting. So we drew, I think even though we do ideally want to save Beside You for a Fable, we definitely need to just play it as a land here. And I'm just going to go for Lovestruck Beast because even if they have removal, I think they're probably incentivized to kill the 1/1 here. We just want the Lovestruck Beast to survive in order to play Henge next turn, whereas if we played Steelleaf Champion, they might use their removal on that instead. You know, if they had Fatal Push, they might have saved the Blood Token as a way to trigger Revolt. So doing it this way round, I think, means that Lovestruck Beast is more likely to survive than any of the other creatures, which will then enable us to slam Great Henge. Them having Croxer in the graveyard is a bit of a concern, because that is a card that can kind of stonewall us later in the game. Okay, they attack with Blood Tithe Harvester, so that pretty heavily signals, like, we can't afford to block, because they could have another Bone Crusher Giant there, and we really want Lovestruck Beast to survive. Get to resolve Great Henge, which is huge here. That is so big against a Rakdos deck. They could be main decking a Braid or Coligan's Command, but I imagine that's probably in pretty low numbers, so slamming Great Henge here is very big. And we can also play another Lovestruck Beast token. Okay, so they did have Bonecrusher Giant, that's not really a surprise. You know, they could have been bluffing with the Bloodtithe Harvester attack, but that's pretty risky, so we could have guessed that they have the Bonecrusher Giant there, but unless they have a way to kill Great Henge here immediately, we should be good enough to just pull ahead next turn, because Great Henge is just going to provide us so much card advantage here. Again, Croxer is a little bit of a concern because it's a 6/6 that outscales our creature. Okay, they do have Fables, so we would have liked to keep the Poseidon to kill that, but getting Great Henge in play was much more important, and I think we want to save this Kazandi Mammoth as a creature. Oh, okay, Ooze is a great draw here, because then we can just immediately get rid of this Croxer, which was the biggest issue for us. Primal Might is also nice because that gives us a way to kill Fable here once it flips, which is really sick. So just going to play the Steel Leaf Champion here. I'm just trying to think whether we want to pay mana with the Hash Up Oasis or not. I don't think it really matters. I'll just do it like this, and then... Oh, okay, I was going to say this way we could just pay to use the Scavenging Ooze later, but now we've got another Lovestruck Beast token. We can attack with the 5/5 here. See if they block here. If they do, I think they kind of have to, because they're not likely to be running Wrath of God effects, and we already have a ton of power in play, so we can just pass the turn here. Again, we could have played the Kazandi Mammoth as a land, but I think it's more important that we just have a high density of creatures in order to trigger the Great Henge here. And it's great that we drew the Primal Might. Okay, so we lose the Primal Might, so they can use the Reflection in 2 turns, but we just need to apply as much pressure as we can before then. Okay, sweet. We got there. So, against Rakdos Midrange, we definitely want Shaper's Sanctuary here for sure. And then just debating whether we bring in Primal Might or Outland Liberator. If they don't run a high amount of Kalitas, I think I like bringing in the Liberator, but I feel like they probably are running Kalitas, so just need to check that we've got enough creatures for Collector's Company. 26 is fine. I think you definitely don't want to ever go below 24. I'm going to trim on the Primal Mights here slightly, just because we haven't seen Kalitas yet. It is quite annoying because, you know, we do kind of need Primal Might in order to kill Kalitas, but, sorry, I'm just trying to think what the last cut we want to do here is. We could trim the Great Henge, because against Thoughtseize it's going to be much more difficult to pull it off, especially going second here. Yeah, I think I'll run it back like that. But yeah, like I was saying, there is a real tension, because ideally we want to bring in Outland Liberator, because it allows us to run a higher creature count for Collected Company and Great Henge, allows us to be a bit more proactive, as well as giving us good ways to shut off Reflection, because Reflection plus Bloodtithe Harvester is a hard late game for us to beat. This kind of sucks. I think we have to mull down to 5, which is very bad against the Thoughtseize deck, but I mean, we could also keep this and try and hit a land off the top. I'm going to risk it, I think. This is pretty risky, but we've got Shaper's Sanctuary that can draw us if they do use removal in the early game. Okay, sweet. So we did draw a Kazandi Mammoth we can play as a land. I think we're going to play that first, and then we can play either double Shaper's Sanctuary or Shaper's Lovestruck Beast token next turn. But yeah, like I was saying, I think in an ideal world we'd want to play Outland Liberator as a way to kill Reflection of Kikijiki, but then we have no answer to Kalitas, which can be a very powerful card against us. So I think going second, I probably want to bring in Primal Might as a way to kill Kalitas. No third land is a problem here. Just got to run Scavenging Ooze out here. But yeah, maybe going first I might switch back to Liberators. But yeah, this is kind of an issue here, because we'd miss land drops, which means that even though we have 2 Shaper's Sanctuaries in play, they might just be able to kind of ignore them and just start pressuring us here if they have a bunch of removal. Yeah, okay. So we just got to hope they don't have another creature here. If they don't play another creature, I think we have a good chance of stabilizing. Okay, sweet, there's a third land. So even if we play Steel Leaf Champion... okay, they do have another creature. So what, we're taking 7 down to 10 here. Then we play the Steel Leaf Champion, and we go down to 1 if they have another removal spell here, and then we're dead even with Collected Company. So thinking about it, I think we misplayed there. We should have played Shaper's Sanctuary and a Lovestruck Beast token. Because then we'd have had another chump blocker here. We would, instead of going down to 1, we would go down to 5, which is a huge difference going into a Collected Company turn. So yeah, I think I definitely misplayed. I should have, rather than getting 2 Shaper's Sanctuaries in play, I should have just gone for Shaper's Sanctuary, Lovestruck Beast token. So yeah, we've lost here. Even if we get a perfect hit on company, we don't have enough creatures to block. If they hit their 5th land, they can animate one of their lands. So I'll see what we hit off company. You know, maybe I'll let them. You know, they might have not blocked there for whatever reason. Okay, they had the Bone Crusher as well. So even though we did get kind of unlucky with our moles and our lands there, I think we probably did misplay slightly. So like I said, going first here, I think I'm going to bring in Liberator, cut the Primal Mites, which does leave us kind of weak to Kalitas, but I think we just need to be proactive here and try and maximise our chances of getting a Henge in play, try and maximise our chances of going on the front foot, because that was a game where they just out-tempoed us there. Going first, we have a really big advantage here, I think, so we need to really try and press that advantage. But yeah, last game I should have gone Shapers and Lovestruck Beast token. But yeah, going into game 3, I feel pretty confident in this matchup overall, so hopefully we can take advantage of going first here. Yeah, sweet, this is great. So one thing that I think is quite important to point out is against Rakdos, even if you have Llanowar Elves, I think it's better to play Shaper Sanctuary on turn 1, because otherwise they can just Fatal Push your Llanowar Elves with no drawback here, really. And even if we're playing Llanowar Elves on turn 2, there's still pretty big incentive for them to try and kill it, because we could have Collected Company, for example. So I think generally, even if you have a turn 1 elf, it's better to get Shaper Sanctuary in play, specifically against Rakdos Midrange, because basically all of their interaction is single target. So yeah, sweet. So they do take out the Llanowar Elves here, which gives us a draw. So I really like getting Shapers in play on turn 1 there. And then I'm going to get Kazandi Mammoth into play here, just because if we draw a land, then that enables us to play Great Henge next turn, which is obviously going to be sick if we can get that. See what the opponent has here. Okay, so they play Fable, so we really want to see an untapped land here. Okay, that's a bit unfortunate. We do have 3 Mystics here, so as long as they don't kill the Kazandi Mammoth, I think we should be good to resolve Great Henge next turn, because even if we don't draw our land for the turn, we have 6 mana to pay for this Henge in play already. Now they do get to loot 2 off the Fable, so that is going to obviously dig them close to what they need to hit. Now there is, you know, some temptation to play Liberator and just kill the Fable, but with a Henge in hand, especially because they could draw a Thoughtseize at any point, I think just trying to maximise our chances of getting Henge into play as quickly as possible is the better line here. Okay, they have another Fable, so that's a little bit disconcerting, because that is a card that's going to run away with the game. Land is perfect here. Now we can play the Henge, get Liberator into play to kill one of the reflections. See what we draw. Oh, okay, perfect. Second Liberator is great. Now we have answers to both of their reflections, which is great. So in general, I would quite like to use Liberator to destroy the Fable that hasn't looted yet, to stop them looting. But then that makes us quite vulnerable to Fatal Push on the other one. I really want to ensure that we kill both of these reflections, and if we choose to kill the one that hasn't looted them yet, they could just very easily Fatal Push the other Liberator while we don't have mana open. Whereas waiting here, even if they Fatal Push one of the Liberators, we can just sack the one that they target in response to kill a reflection. So ideally we would have liked, like I said, to stop them looting. But I think this is probably the right play, because it plays around Fatal Push a bit better. And I think leaving them, or potentially leaving them with... Oh wow, they have Kogan's Command. Okay, so that's a bit annoying. Well, that's quite annoying actually, because Great Henge was our way that we're going to go over the top. But I think leading on a play that potentially leaves them with a reflection of Kiki Jiki is a really bad idea, because that is one of the ways that they can just easily outgrind us in the late game. So I'm going to wait. You know, we could have activated Outland Liberator there, but I think we might as well attack first, get in for extra damage while we can, and then we can just Liberator main phase 2. Because if we sack at the end of their turn, we're utilising our mana fully, but we're also just missing out on potential damage here. And we have a lot of mana, you know, it's not like we're short of stuff to do with our mana here. Ooze is also a great draw off the top here, because we can start growing that out of range of stuff like Heartless Act immediately while they don't have mana open for it. They could obviously have Fatal Push, but we have Shaper Sanctuary in play, so that's not really a big concern. So we're definitely going to fire off the Outland Liberator now before they can activate the Reflection. And then we'll just get Scavenging Ooze into play, and we're going to activate it immediately to play around Heartless Act. And it doesn't look like they've got Fatal Push either, because Arena's sort of giving priority away there. Actually, thinking about it, this was probably a misplay because they could have a braid potentially, but I guess we can, even if they have a braid, you know, they wait for us to activate ooze next, and then they try and braid it, and we can just activate ooze again, so that's probably not that much of an issue, I don't think, but probably should have activated ooze an extra time before their turn, just to play around that a little bit more. But yeah, losing the Great Henge there was pretty annoying. Having Shaper Sanctuary in play is huge here though, because I feel like it's going to be very difficult for them to interact with us favourably with Shaper Sanctuary in play. So I have another Fable which is a bit annoying. Thankfully we won't have to deal with that for a little while, and we do have the Outland Liberator here in order to deal with the Reflection. So I'm just going to fire off Ooze here while we've got the mana. Actually, thinking about that might be a misplay because... okay, we didn't get punished. I was going to say they could have Fatal pushed the Liberator in response to the Ooze trigger there to then stop us killing their Reflection. So that was probably a misplay. I probably shouldn't have used that last Ooze activation. Collected Company, obviously a sick draw here. I think we're in a great position to win this one now. Okay, so they chump block the Ooze, that makes sense. Now we can fire off the Liberator to kill their Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. Just want to make sure that we don't waste any life off the Hash Up Oasis here. And then, yeah, we're in a sick position now, because we can Company here. We've already got 6/6 Ooze in play and Mammoth. They're down to 8, so, and they've only got access to 5 mana, so I think, assuming we get a decent Company hit here, this should be good enough to just win the game. So they're looting here. Trying to think what they could have that could be problematic. Obviously, if they bought into sweepers, that could be really bad. Thankfully, from what I've seen of most Rakdos lists, they don't run many, if any, sweepers in the sideboard, so... but they have got a lot of loots with the Fable. Like I said, I really would have liked to use Liberator on one of the Fables before they loot, but in that situation, they could have potentially killed the Liberator in response, which would have stopped us killing another Fable... another Reflection once it had flipped, so... okay, they play the Bone Crusher, makes sense, gets a blocker into play. Let's see what else they've got here. Okay, they're passing. Sweet, so let's see what we hit off Company here. Oh wow, come on. That is so unlikely. Damn, okay, that is pretty annoying. Things are going to be a lot closer now. I still think we're ahead here, especially with the Shaper Sanctuary, but that whiff is pretty annoying, because I think that would have basically guaranteed us winning, even if we'd hit like one good creature there. Okay, they do have push for the Ooze, but that does draw us an extra card here, so... okay, Beside You's nice. That gives us an answer to their Reflection, which is quite important here. Okay, what do we do this turn? So, I'm really not keen on trading the Mammoth with the Bone Crusher Giant here if I can avoid it. So we could Hash Up Oasis the Mammoth, and then that forces them to... or we could Oasis the Elf, which forces through extra damage. You know, they trade with the Mammoth, and then we get in for... what would that be? For 6 damage, puts them down to 2, but that doesn't... you know, if they have Fatal Push, we can get blown out there. I think I prefer using Oasis on the Mammoth, because then they need to have Heartless Act to play around that. If we Oasis the Mammoth, that goes up to a 6/6, which forces them to block the Mammoth, because if they just block an Elf, they're taking 8 damage here. So I think we're going to buff the Mammoth. We could have, like I said, we could have buffed the Mystic instead, but that doesn't play around Fatal Push. So I think if we attack like this, assuming they don't have Heartless Act, they have to just chump the Mammoth here with the Bone Crusher Giant. Okay, they do have Heartless Act, so that's a bit annoying. So we lose an Elf, which isn't great. And we could play a land and play the Lovestruck Beast here, but I really want to hold this beside you to kill the Reflection. So yeah, that was a bit annoying that they had the Heartless Act, but I still think that was the better line there, because if we pump the Elf and they have either Heartless Act or Fatal Push, they can just trade the Bone Crusher Giant with the Mammoth and then kill the Elf. I guess it's the same outcome, but it just plays around more cards. Wow, I'm surprised they're attacking here, because we have the answer to the reflection. We could, you know, we could put them down to 4 here potentially. So I'm going to lead on the Beside You. Actually, I maybe should have done that during their turn, because that gives them an extra land to utilise now. Yeah, thinking about it, that was probably a misplay. And while we would like to put them down to 4, I think we're just going to go Llanowar Elves and then create 2 1/1s off the Lovestruck Beast here, because that then enables us to get the 2 Lovestruck Beasts into play next turn, and even if they do have ways to kill our Elvish Mystics and Llanowar Elves, we will still have 1/1s into play to attack with the Lovestruck Beast. But yeah, thinking about it, I mean, they played a Blood Crypt tap, so that kind of signifies to me they don't have 2 mana removal here, but we probably should have waited until their upkeep to play the Beside You, just so they didn't have an extra land, because that could have come up, you know, say they had a 2 mana spell they wouldn't have been able to play otherwise. Okay, Chandra. They add red mana, that's not a good sign. Oh wow, they just don't use the mana, what? That's weird. I would have thought they'd wanted to get the 2 damage in at least. So Ronus is a sick draw here. I don't want to run that out yet. I think we would just want to get both Lovestruck Beasts into play here. And Chandra is a bit of a concern, but I think the opponent's at a low enough life total here where we just probably want to start going face next turn, I imagine. But yeah, I think we're still in a good position. That Chandra could run away with the game, because the problem here is if they have a lot of removal and we start going face, if it gets to the point where Chandra can uptick to the ultimate, we could still lose this game, but they would need a lot of removal for that to work. And we also have Shaper's Sanctuary, so any single target removal they have is just going to draw us extra cards here. So Chandra's up to 6 loyalty here. Kind of scary, but again, I think they're at such a low life total where we just probably want to go face, especially with this Ronus here. Okay, so we'll play the Ronus here, and then we can attack with both Bonecrusher Giants and 3 of the 1/1s, and then we can still have mana open to activate the Ronus here, which, I mean, if they don't have removal, which they might very well do, you know, then we can pump the Lovestruck Beast, which is lethal, even if they block both Lovestruck Beasts with the Bonecrusher Giants. So even though Chandra is close to the ultimate, I think, you know, we just need to go face here, because they're at such a low life total. So if they have removal, can they block the 1/1s? I don't think they can afford to here, because if they had 2 removal spells for each Lovestruck Beast, then I guess they could just chump block, but then we draw 2 cards. We can pump one of the 1/1s to kill the Bonecrusher Giant anyway. But yeah, here I think we have to pump a Lovestruck Beast, because if we pump one of the 1/1s, we're 1 short of lethal, whereas this is exactly lethal, I think. Okay, they do have the Noxious Grass for the Lovestruck Beast, which is a bit annoying, but we still get in for a decent amount of damage. Them gaining the 1 life there could be problematic, but we put them down to 4, and we have a lot of power in play next turn as well. We drew a Collected Company, which is gas. Okay, they do have Fatal Push, that is a bit annoying, but we have, I mean, already in play we have a lot of stuff that we can use to deal lethal next turn, so as long as they don't have a sweeper here, I think we're good to win. Okay, that's a land, so just gotta hope they don't hit a sweeper off the Chandra. Okay, they play a second Chandra, so they're obviously digging for a sweeper. Okay, they whiff, sweet, so we should win this then. Yeah, sweet. Okay, that was close. We got there though. Okay, so we're going first here. And yeah, this looks decent. You know, we've obviously not got top end, but we've got Lovestruck Beast token we can play on turn 1. We've got double Ooze, which is decent against certain matchups as well. And we got Ronus and Lovestruck Beast at the top end as well, so okay, interesting. So, Overgrown Tomb into Thoughtseize probably is going to be Jun's Sacrifice if I had to guess. Okay, they take the Ooze, interesting. Okay, didn't draw a 3rd land, but did draw another decent 2-drop to play, which is nice. I think Ooze generally is a card you want to try and play later in the game if possible, once the graveyard's already filled up a little bit and you've got some more mana to be able to activate it straight away, but I'll Stitch the Supplier, okay. Right, okay, so they're probably on Abzan Greasefang instead then. So I'm very glad we got this ooze here, but missing land drops here is kind of brutal. And I think unfortunately we do have to attack into this Stitches supply. You know, we need to start racing them here. I don't mind attacking with the 1/1 token either, because we have that second Love Struck Beast in hand that we can make another token with. Ah, okay, they did mill a Parhelion, so we might just be too slow here. If we'd hit our third land, it would have been completely different, because we can then use ooze to pick off the Parhelion. Okay, wow, they didn't have Greasefang on turn 3. That's huge for us. Okay, they've got another supplier here, but with ooze in play, as long as it survives, that's not really a big deal. Okay, so we're going to activate ooze here to turn it into a 3/3. So we exile the Parhelion. Oh, okay, I'm an idiot. Whoops. For some reason I thought that exiling Parhelion would give me a counter. Obviously we should have exiled a creature here, and unfortunately I don't think we can afford to exile the creature now, because obviously turning ooze into a 3/3 would then trigger the Werewolf Pack Leader when we attack with both, which would draw us a card and hopefully hit our next land. But if we use our last mana to exile the creature here, and we don't draw a land, then we can't stop them with Greasefang. You know, they obviously have multiple vehicles in the graveyard, but the thing is with Greasefang is they have to target a specific one, so we have to hold a green mana open here to exile the one that they target with Greasefang if they do play it. Okay, they play Chariot, so yeah, that was obviously a huge misplay last turn. I should have exiled a creature. For some reason I thought Parhelion was... I guess it is kind of a creature because it's a vehicle, but that was just a misplay on my part. And yeah, like I said, if we'd drawn our land, we could have exiled a creature with our last mana to try and draw for our third land, but if we'd missed, they could have just freely gone Greasefang and we would have just lost the game there, so... Okay, we would have drawn the land, but I still don't think it's worth the risk of just flat out losing the game, because, you know, even as things stand, I think we've got a decent shot here. So I think, you know, since they're Abzan, there's no real risk at keeping ooze at 2 power. You know, if we were against Mardu and they could be running Bonecrusher Giant, I think there's a pretty high incentive to just activate ooze and turn it into a 3/3 to play around Bonecrusher Giant, but ooze's size doesn't matter because their main interaction is going to be Fatal Push, I imagine, so... Not going to attack here, obviously, because we would ideally like to attack with the Werewolf Pack Leaders together to draw 2 cards. Okay, they do have the Greasefang, so I'm very glad that I didn't get greedy, even though we would have drawn a land. If we hadn't, we would have got punished there, but... so yeah, we'll just exile the Parhelion in response here. And, you know, even though we're mana screwed, we're locking off their most powerful plays. They attack with the Chariot. We're definitely going to double block here because we don't want them to get value every turn. They could have had Fatal Push, but Arena's kind of giving away that they don't because it's automatically passing priority, so I'm happy to just block there. Okay, and they Thoughtseize. I mean, that's not really going to make a difference here because all 3 creatures are 3 mana and we're kind of stuck on mana a bit. Okay, Beside You's nice. I mean, in certain situations we'd want to save that to be able to kill Parhelion at instant speed, but I think we just want to get a Steel Leaf Champion into play here, and we need to keep a green mana open. Oh wow, they just scoop. I guess Scavenging Ooze just shuts off their graveyard, and we didn't actually see any interaction. There's a chance they just weren't running Fatal Push in the main deck. So here, obviously, Greasefang, we want to have Unlicensed Hearse to shut off their graveyard, and I think we can probably trim Primal Might thinking about it, because none of their creatures are really must-kill threats. Most of their creatures would want to be... Well, their most important creature in Greasefang is... you need instant speed interaction to shut it off, so I think Primal Might isn't great here. And just cutting it, we keep our very proactive and linear game plan intact, but we just have extra graveyard hate, so we have Hearse on top of Scavenging Ooze here. I mean, this hand is pretty slow. We don't have anything before turn 3. That has no lands. Wow, okay. That's a bit unfortunate. So, do we have to keep this 1-lander? I mean, I think we kind of do. I'm trying to think what else to put back here. I think we need to keep Mana Dorks with a 1-lander, really. Okay, whiff off the supplier, and we hit our second land, so sweet. Yeah, I mean, that first hand was just too slow, I think. I don't think we could really keep it. Oh wow, they have Witherbloom Command to kill the Llanowar Elves, and they mill over a Parhelion. That kind of sucks. Okay, so we just have to go Llanowar Elves and Lovestruck Beast token here. They could very well have Greasefang and we just lose the game, but... I don't think we can really afford to go down to 4. Yeah, okay, they have the Greasefang. We just scoop it up here. So that was a bit unfortunate. I don't think we could afford to keep that first hand because we were going second and we had no plays before turn 3. Then obviously the second hand had no lands, and then I don't think we can really afford to go down to 5 cards. So I don't know. Maybe we should have mulliganed more aggressively to Graveyard Hate. I don't know. Wow, okay, this is a snap keep. We have a playable hand and 2 unlicensed Hearse, so yeah, this looks great. So we can lead on the Lovestruck Beast token here, and then we're just going to slam Hearse on turn 2 before they have a chance to Thought Seize it. Okay, that's not a bad mill off the Stitcher Supplier, but we're just going to get Hearse into play here, so it doesn't really matter. No attacks with the 1/1 because we don't want to trigger the Supplier. Let's see what they've got here. Ah, okay, they do have the Witherbloom command. So we're going to exile the Chariot and can't stay away here. We've just got to hope they don't have removal for the second Hearse we've got here. Okay, so now they have a white source as well. Do they attack? No, they don't. Okay, so we can get the second Hearse into play here. We just got to hope they don't have another Witherbloom command or another answer for it, really. Because this build, they do obviously have Chariot to play fairly, but this build does look much more all-in on the graveyard to me. Okay, they just hardcast the Greasefang with nothing in the graveyard. But yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, since the iteration ban, I think it kind of makes sense. We're going to get rid of their lands here so they don't get them off any future Witherbloom commands, but with the banning of iteration, Phoenix has kind of fallen off the map, and Greasefang hasn't been that much popular recently, so I guess I could see an argument, you know, maybe people are cutting Graveyard Hate from their sideboards, which makes more all-in graveyard versions like this better. Okay, they've got Sorin here, interesting. But yeah, I don't know, this build seems quite vulnerable. The only way they've got really playing a fair game plan is with Chariot, which is a decent card, but I think as long as people are still running Graveyard Hate, I'd probably prefer to play Esper or Mardu, which has a better fair game plan. But I don't know, I've not played Greasefang personally in a long time, so hard for me to say. So here we're going to attack Sorin with the Lovestruck Beast and the Pack Leader. We don't mind if they block with the Supplier really because we have her shutting off their graveyard. We don't want to let their Planeswalkers uptick. They're going to get lifelink off their creatures if we just leave it in play, so wow, they're blocking with the Greasefang, interesting. Okay, so they double block the Lovestruck Beast, that's fine. So they will get the Stitcher Supplier mills, but we have Hearse in place, so that shouldn't really matter. Let's see what they mill here. Okay, that's all fine. And then we'll just empty our hand, we'll get Steel Leaf Champion and the Elvish Mystic into play, and I feel pretty good about this spot now. As long as they don't have a way to kill the Hearse, we should be good. We're definitely on the front foot here. So opponent's in the tank. So, I mean, obviously we could just exile this now, but they could very well have a mill card into Greasefang. You know, they could have Grizzly Salvage or Stitcher Supplier into Greasefang, and if we use the Hearse now, they can just win out of nowhere. So since we're so far ahead, I think we can afford to let them get this back just to ensure that we keep their graveyard on lock so they can't combo us. Because like I said, you know, we could just Hearse in response to Sorin, exile those two, but they could very easily get Greasefang into, get Parhelion into the graveyard, off a Supplier or a Grizzly Salvage, and then just play Greasefang and win, because they do have 5 mana available if they have their land for turn here. So even though we are giving them a creature that does loot them, I think it's worth waiting here, because otherwise we're giving them a way to win in a game where we're already pretty far ahead. So opponent's still in the tank here, obviously tough spot for them because of the Hearse here. Okay, they can't stay away Greasefang. I think at this point, you know, they've used 2 of their possible 5 mana, so there's no real way that if we exile Greasefang and Parhelion here, that they can combo off. You know, they could have another Greasefang, but they don't have any vehicles in grave, so I think I'm pretty happy exiling now. Okay, sweet, yeah, we got there. Okay, so we're going first here. And yeah, I think this is keepable. Obviously that we don't have Company or Henge's top end, but we've got a fairly decent curve up. We've got some very powerful turn 3 plays. If we were going second, this might be a little bit too slow because we don't really do anything powerful until turn 3 with this hand, but on the play, I think it's fine, definitely. So turn 1 Thoughtseize, probably going to take the Steelleaf Champion here, unless there's a creature they want to defend from the Primal Might. Yeah, okay, makes sense. Since we have this beside you as our third land, and they've Thoughtseized away a creature, I think we're probably going to be playing both of these mammoths as creatures. You know, had we drawn another threat there, we could have potentially played mammoth as a land, but I think, as things stand, we definitely want to be playing these out as creatures. Because I imagine we're against just Rakdos midrange here. Could be against Mardy Greasefang potentially, we're not 100% sure yet, but we definitely want to have a high density of threats here. Okay, another forest, so we'll definitely play that first. So we can potentially save this beside you as a way to kill Fable of the Mirror Breaker if they play that. Or maybe Unlicensed Hearse or something. Okay, they do have the Fable, so pretty nice that we got to hold on to... Oh wow, okay, I was going to say pretty nice that we got to hold on to beside you, but since we drew the Henge, we're just going to slam that here. That was a pretty sick draw, not going to lie. And now I think we can afford to attack. They're already down to 14 from the Thoughtseizers, so if they let this through, they're down to 9. This does enable them to get a free treasure off the 2-2 on the attack, but I think that's completely fine. You know, assuming they don't kill the Henge here, I think we're just going to run away with the game. Now again, we did use up our Beside, so we don't have an answer to the reflection yet, but you know, we don't have to worry about that for at least 2 turns. Okay, Trespasser, that's completely fine, so we can just slam both the Lovestruck Beast and the Mammoth, start drawing a bunch of cards here, and they'll be really, really big creatures. We still have the 1-1 in play, which enables us to attack with the Lovestruck Beast as well, so assuming they don't have a way to kill Henge here, I think we should be good. Okay, what else do they have? Okay, Bloodtithe Harvester is a little bit annoying because that plus Reflection is a pretty strong late game against us, but oh wow, okay, Companies are great here. We'll definitely lead on that. And, pretty good choices here. I think we'll go Werewolf Pack Leader and Scavenging Ooze here, because that's a creature that can just very easily outscale whatever else they've got going on. Yeah, okay, I don't blame them for scooping up there. That was a pretty sick turn. So here against Rakdos midrange, we definitely want Primal Might. No, it's not Primal Might, sorry. We definitely want Shaper's Sanctuary. And since we didn't see Kalitas, you know, this is a bit of a risk. If we're worried about Kalitas, we should be keeping Primal Might in. If we're not, I really like bringing in Liberator instead, because it's a higher... You keep a higher creature count for both Company and Great Henge. You're more proactive. You can be more aggressive as well, and obviously the weakness of Primal Might against a deck with a bunch of interaction is that they can make it, they can fizzle it. Obviously, if they kill the creature you're targeting it with, but Kalitas is a powerful enough threat that if you're expecting it, I think it's probably worth keeping Primal Might in. But I don't know why. I just feel like this situation. I kind of prefer Liberator anyway. Okay, nice. So we draw a land off the top, which is decent. Now we'll go Liberator, and then we can go either Lovestruck Beast, probably Steelleaf Champion since we didn't play the 1-1 off the Lovestruck Beast, and then hopefully we can go Henge on 4 again here, which would be sick. Okay, so they stomp the Liberator and attack him with the Bloodtithe Harvester. Okay, nice, that's another land, so we don't have to pay 1 off the Hashep Oasis. So we'll just run out the Steelleaf Champion here, and if they don't have a way to kill it, we can just slam Great Henge next turn, which is sick. We do have Beside You as a way to kill Fable as well. Okay, they have Epic Downfall, sure. But again, that stops them committing to the board, so I'm pretty happy about that. And now we can go Lovestruck Beast token and Lovestruck Beast. And if they can't kill the Lovestruck Beast, we can still slam Henge next turn anyway, so... kind of removal check here. They need to have something to kill the Lovestruck Beast. And the nice thing about this is, typically Rakdos prioritise killing the 1-1, so that the Lovestruck Beast can't attack.
Okay, there's the Fable. Wow, it's Tapland, so we get to get Henge into play here, which is huge. That's really good. And we've also got Liberator now as a way to kill the Fable in addition to the Poseidon, so yeah, this is looking pretty sick. Okay, another land, which means we can save this Poseidon for a future Fable, which is really nice. And I think I'm pretty tempted to just outland Liberator the Fable now to stop them getting the loot. Especially because we have Beside You in hand for a second one. And I think I'm pretty happy attacking here. You know, put the pressure on them. They've only got one card in hand. They could attack back, but I really don't think they're going to be winning this race. Especially when we've got Scavenging Ooze that can gain us a bunch of life as well. So we take 5 down to 11 here. I mean, I guess they could kill the 1-1, which will slow us down a little bit, but... Wow, okay, there's a company. That's gas. So, I think I'm going to lead on attacking here. They got a fatal push for the 1-1 here. No, they just let us attack. I want to attack first just to withhold information. I think they're less likely to block. And now we're going to get a bunch of creatures into play, hopefully off this company. Which means that block is a lot worse, hopefully. Okay, perfect. Yeah, there we go. Double Steel Leaf Champion. That's, you know, one of the best hits that we could get off company. And... now we can go for Ooze as well, and it will instantly grow out of Stomp range. Yeah, okay, sick.
Okay, sweet, so we're going first here. And this hand is very close to being good enough, but I think it's just too clunky. If we miss our third land drop, this hand is just kind of a disaster. We're against Karuga, so I have to assume that's fires, so we need a pretty fast hand. I think this hand just has too much potential downside. We're going to mull. Okay, this is much better. This is just a very fast hand here, so... just trying to think what we want to put back here. Probably Ronus. You know, if that Kazandi Mammoth was... well, I'm not sure actually. No, I think it's just Ronus here. Because if we don't hit our 4th land, we can just play Kazandi Mammoth as a land to play company. We've got Mystic into potential Steel Leaf on turn 2. Wow, Sphinx of Foresight. That's a card I've not seen in a long time. But yeah, I assume their interaction on Karuga is going to be like Bone Crusher, Giant Brazen Borrower, so we know that Elvish Mystic is going to live here, which is great, which means it basically guarantees the turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion, which I think is going to be pretty hard for a Karuga deck to beat, but we'll see. Okay, Temple of Epiphany. So we'll just slam the turn 2 Steel Leaf here. Okay, they're shocking a land, so they've either got, what would it be, Twin Shot Sniper, Bone Crusher Giant, or Brazen Borrower, I'd imagine, is their removal suite for turn 2. Wow, okay, they Brazen Borrower before combat. I mean, they probably should have waited for me to attack, because I was going to attack with the Elvish Mystic, which would have meant I didn't have the mana to recast the Steel Leaf Champion, so I'm pretty glad they did that. We play the Kazandu Valley as a land here, and we get to recast the Steel Leaf Champion, so that was pretty good for us that they did that before attacks. Okay, interesting. So obviously we would love to play our 4th land to be able to play Llanowar Elves and company, but I think since they've got Fable in play, we want to save this beside you to kill the Reflection, and we obviously want a company here as well, so I quite like holding onto the beside you here, and also, you know, they're definitely on fires, so we could use beside you to kill a Fires of Invention as well, which seems quite important. I'm going to fire off the company here before they get the treasure, just in case they have some weird counter spell that we don't know about. I guess it doesn't really matter. Okay, that's not great, but at least we got 2 creatures, and one of them is decent, so we'll just block with the Bone Crush. With the Lovestruck Beast here. Okay, Swearing Sun. So that kind of sucks, but it's great that the Steel Leaf Champion survives. That was really important, I think. And now we can company again, and then we have beside you to kill the Reflection as well. So as long as they don't have a huge turn here, and as long as we get a decent company here, I think we're in a pretty good spot. Oh wow, Cavalier of Gales. That's another card I've not seen in a long time. So what's that? Let's Brainstorm on Enter the Battlefield. And then I can't quite remember what it does when it dies. What does it do? Scry 2. Okay, that's not too bad. I thought it was that. So that's a pretty good hit. We've got Pack Leader and Lovestruck Beast allows us to we can play a Llanowar Elves to allow the Lovestruck Beast to attack, and then we just beside you the Reflection before combat, and that should be lethal then, I think. So I think we'll attack first here, and then oh no, I pressed next too quickly there. Okay, that was mislethal. That was my bad. I'm going to be annoyed if I lose this now. We obviously should have used beside you before blockers. I thought we were like a step behind. The Werewolf Pack Leader draw trigger threw me off there. Okay, that was obviously a misplay, and now now I'm in a tough position, because if they have another sweeper, that could take us off, that could slow us down and completely take us off lethal. But I think they're more likely to have single target removal here, and they could, if they have 2 bits of single target removal, that can take us off lethal. Okay, they divide by 0. Okay, that's a good sign. That shows they don't have Sweltering Suns, but yeah, I'm still kind of annoyed that I forgot to beside you there. Okay, sweet. We didn't get punished. I mean, obviously I should have used beside you before combat there, but thankfully we didn't get punished for it. So here, sideboarding, we definitely want Liberator. I quite like a couple of Shaper's Sanctuary, because I imagine if they have more removal, they're going to be bringing it in. Ooze doesn't seem great here. Primal Might doesn't seem great here either. I think we just want to go as proactive as possible whilst having some amount of protection. I don't think we really want anything else in this matchup, but again, they're running blue-red fires. We didn't see the 3rd colour, so they might be running something weird that we're not expecting, but I quite like sideboarding like this. You know, Primal Might is obviously good against their big creatures, but we don't want to have tons of Primal Mights in the early game where they don't really do anything. Okay, we can't keep a 1-lander here. Wow, another 1-lander. Can we afford to keep this and risk that we draw our 2nd land on time? I mean, the hand's pretty sick. Other than that, I don't think we can risk it. Oh wow, another 1-lander. I mean, we have to keep this. We're not going to go down to 4. And we've got turn 1 Llanowar, so assuming we draw our 2nd land, we can play a turn 2 Steel Leaf into potential Great Henge on turn 3, so for a Malta 5, there's a lot of upside with this hand, assuming we keep hitting land drops. Okay, they've got another Sphinx of Foresight, that's fine. I mean, we haven't seen Fires of Invention, but I'm like 99% sure that's what they're playing. Otherwise, their deck just doesn't make sense. Okay, sweet. Instantly draw our land, which is great. So we can Llanowar Elves. They could have the Bone Crusher Giant or Brazen Borrower or Twin Shot Sniper here. Okay, they do have the Bone Crusher Giant, so that does slow us down quite a bit, which is a bit annoying, but we've got Werewolf Pack Leader to play, and then assuming, you know, if we draw lands 3 and 4, we could potentially get Great Henge into play on 4, which would be very good. Wait, there's the 3rd land. So, I'm just trying to think whether we want to attack with the Pack Leader here. If we attack now, we miss out on the draw next turn, so I think we'll wait. Oh wow, they have the Chandra, okay. So that kind of sucks. We could fire up Lair of the Hydra and guaranteed kill the Chandra here, but then they just block our Lair with the Bone Crusher Giant and we lose one of our 3 lands, which doesn't seem worth it. And I don't think we can just sit back and not do anything, because if they have another removal spell for our Pack Leader, then they'll still have Bone Crusher to protect the Chandra, so I think we have to force the block there. Okay, they add red, which isn't a good sign. Okay, they stomp the Outland Liberator, and then they play Sphinx of Foresight, sure. Okay. Company, I mean, it's a good card to have, especially with Henge. We just need to hit our 4th land now. So they get to start scrying with the Sphinx and upticking Chandra. So this spot is kind of rough. We still have Henge, though. If we can go Company into Henge, you know, if we hit our 4th land, we've got a decent shot, I think. Okay, they borrow with a Liberator, and there's Fires, okay. That was the 2nd card they played, though, so they don't get to do anything. Wow, we missed the land drop. I think we just have to go, you know, we could go Mystic here, but I think we just have to kill the Fires. Because, you know, we're only taking, I say only, we're taking 4 plus the 2 off the Chandra if they don't get to cast a card, which is a pretty fast clock, but with what we have, I don't think we can force, oh, they have a 2nd Fires. Okay, yeah, I think we're just too far behind now that we're not going to win this one. Let's see if we hit our 4th land. If we do, then Company could get us back into it, maybe. Pack Leader, yeah, I think we're probably losing this one, but I'll play one more turn, because at least we have the mana to cast Company now. And it will also be useful to see more of their deck, I think, because even though we know they're on Fires, we don't really know what else they've got going on here. Okay, so I'll obviously block the 2/2 here. Can't afford to let any damage through. Okay, another Sweltering Suns. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be winning this one. But I would quite like to see a bit more of their deck. Oh wow, never hit the 4th land. So that was a bit unfortunate. But I think going into game 3, as long as we don't mull to 5 again, we should have a much better chance. Because their deck, you know, it does look powerful, but I think they're going to struggle to beat fast starts from us, and they're also probably going to struggle to beat Henge if we can get it down quickly. So on the play into game 3, as long as we have a decent hand, I think we got a good shot. Okay, so this looks great. We can basically guarantee a turn 2 Steel Leaf champion, which is going to apply a ton of pressure. So presumably they lead on the tap land here. Wow, there's the Great Henge. Okay, sick. So if we hit an untapped land, we get to go Henge next turn, presuming they don't kill the Elvish Mystic here. Okay, Temple of Epiphany. So as long as we hit an untapped land here, we're gas. Yeah, okay, sweet. There we go. So we get to go Henge on 3 here, and we get to go Mystic, and I think I'm happy to go Lovestruck Beast token. Even if they have a Sweltering Suns, we can still Collected Company, we can still Lovestruck Beast. Okay, Fable, that's fine. Much better than the Sweltering Suns, obviously. So I think I'm just going to attack with the Steel Leaf and the Elvish Mystic first here. Another Company off the top is obviously sick. And then, I think I'm just going to play the Kazandi Valley and pass with Company open, because they're kind of forced to interact with us here. If they sweep or they tap out for a removal spell, we can just Company. Do they have a counter spell here? Oh, they have Divide by 0. Okay, I mean, that's completely fine. So, we can afford to go Lovestruck Beast and still hold up Company here, so I think we'll just do that. Okay, sick, yeah. Nice, we got there. That's the power of turn 3 Henge. Okay, so we're going second here. And I mean, this hand is really medium, but it's close. I think I'm probably going to mulligan this, because we could get a lot better, but yeah, okay, this is better. That was close though, because against certain aggressive decks that hand is definitely capable of winning, but we have a lot of lands. Scavenging Ooze in the early game isn't great really, so I think this hand's much better. You know, this is kind of really hurt by Thoughtseize though, so just gotta hope they don't have it. Oh wow, they do. Okay, so now our hand is pretty empty, but if we draw a 3-drop next turn and Mystic survives, that's pretty sick. We just gotta hope to draw well now, basically. Okay, Bloodtithe Harvester, sure. Okay. So I don't want to play Scavenging Ooze out here because it will just get killed by the Harvester immediately. But we can't cleanly kill the Harvester with Primal Might. I think out of the options we've got, Primal Might is the best option here, because we get to kill the Harvester, and then assuming they don't have another Thoughtseize, our Scavenging Ooze can just immediately grow to a 4/4, which puts it out of range of a lot of their removal. Well, Bone Crusher Giant anyway. And with what we've got, I think that was probably the best play. You know, we don't need the ramp from Llanowar Elves, really. Wow, unlicensed her, that's interesting. So here, we could go Ooze and make a 1/1 from Lovestruck Beast, but also actually, this was kind of risky because they've got Hearse. They could shut off our Scavenging Ooze ability here, because they can wait for us to activate Scavenging Ooze and then Hearse in response. But I'm not really sure. Okay, so they messed up. They should have waited for us to activate the ooze there. If they had waited with the hearse, we could have just played the Lovestruck Beast 1/1 mode, which would have meant our ooze dies to stomp, but I think it's better than wasting a mana trying to exile something and then their hearse just exiling it instead. So now the ooze is out of range of stomp, like I said, which is really important. Now this hearse is potentially problematic because if it keeps exiling stuff from the graveyard, it could grow bigger than our creatures can get. So I'm just going to attack with the Scavenging Ooze here. But yeah, as this game goes on, if they can start crewing the hearse, it could be problematic. So I think we just need to start applying pressure as quickly as we can. Okay, they do have a Fatal Push, which slows us down a bit, but we have Lovestruck Beast here, thankfully. So we'll slam that. And the nice thing is we also have Lair of the Hydra, so even if they kill the 1/1 here, we can still enable the Lovestruck Beast to attack by turning Lair of the Hydra into a 1/1, which is pretty nice. And they don't have much left in hand either, you know, they've only got 2 cards in hand. They can't activate Den of the Bugbear without playing their 5th land, so as things stand, I think it's alright, but I am worried about this hearse growing to a 6/6, because then if they can start crewing it, we don't really have anything that can attack past it, and we don't have Company or Henge to go over the top of that, really. Okay, they just pass again, interesting. So I think I like playing an extra 1/1 here just so that we can play around Fatal Push. This will enable us to attack with Lovestruck Beast even if they have a removal spell here. If we didn't do that first and they had a removal spell, they could Fatal Push the 1/1, which would force us to activate the Lair, which would mean we couldn't play the second Lovestruck Beast here. I'm just trying to think. For a second there, I thought they could animate the Den and crew up the hearse, but if they did, the Den would enter tap, so they can't crew it. But I just wanted to double check for a second there. But yeah, so they did stomp the 1/1, but because we played the second one, we didn't have to fire up Lair to enable Lovestruck Beast to attack, and now we can just play the second Lovestruck Beast here, which is nice. Annoyingly now hearse is a 6/6, and if they play the Bonecrusher Giant, they can crew it. I mean, we do have Hash Up Oasis to pump our Lovestruck Beast above 6/6, but if they can get more stuff into the graveyard, they can block and then exile in response with hearse to maybe even grow it into an 8/8 if they can get 2 cards into the graveyard. Okay, Blood Tithe Harvester, so that can crew the hearse, unfortunately. Oh wow, okay, sick. Perfect, now we've got the Henge. Now we can just slam Scavenging Ooze, and this is a way that we can go over the top of their hearse. You know, without Company or Henge, it is potentially problematic. We're not going to attack here because they can obviously just crew up the hearse and just eat one of our Lovestruck Beasts in combat. Okay, they've got Chandra. I presume they kill the Ooze here?
You want to play with fire, huh?
Yeah, okay. So Ooze goes down, but we have decent attacks here, I think. So we can pump all of our mana into Primal Might, which I think sounds like a good idea, because we can turn, how much would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll do that on the Lovestruck Beast. Obviously we can't do that on the 1/1 because then that would prevent our Lovestruck Beast from attacking. I presume they crew in response here. But this turns Lovestruck Beast into an 11/11, and then we can attack face with the 11/11, and then attack Chandra with the 1/1, and we could leave it at that, but then that gives them the opportunity of saving the Chandra here. So I think we probably have to go face with the Lovestruck Beast as well. If we go face with the second Lovestruck Beast, that forces them to... Well, the 1/1 will kill Chandra guaranteed, because they either have to block the 11/11 and they lose the hearse, or they block the 5/5 and the Chandra dies and they go down to 2. So I assume they're probably going to block the 5/5 here, but that's still pretty good for us, I think, because they go down to 2, they lose the Chandra and we lose a Lovestruck Beast, and I still think we're in a great position here. Especially because we have Lair of the Hydra and Hash Up Oasis, even if we don't draw another creature to trigger the Henge. You know, we have multiple ways of dealing damage, and being down to 2 is very risky for them. So we'll see what they do here. Presumably they have to play Lovestruck Beast, but then they only have 1 blocker. So if we fire up Lair, they don't have a way to stop the 1/1 and Lair getting in for damage here. Okay, they crack another blood token. I guess they're just trying to dig for removal here. Yeah, okay. So Rakdos definitely wants Shaper Sanctuary. Again, it's kind of risky not bringing Primal Might here in case they've got Kalitas, but and also sometimes we want to keep Ooze in. Like if I see Croxer, I always keep 4 Ooze in, but if not, I like keeping the pack leader in. On the flip side, you know, if they don't have Ooze, they don't seem to be running much graveyard interaction. I like keeping pack leader in instead, and then Ooze. Although I don't know, maybe that's not right. Actually, no. I'm thinking about it. I should have sideboarded the other way. I just got too caught up in it there because pack leader isn't actually that great in this matchup because all of their creatures have, you know, Blood Tithe Harvester, Bone Crusher Giant have 3 toughness, so they can block the pack leader pretty effectively. So I should have kept in Ooze there. That was just just a mistake, I think. So this hand isn't perfect, but I think it's reasonable. You know, we've got Pack Leader and Lovestruck Beast as good threats. We also have Ramp. Wow, okay, Ronus is sick. Ronus is really strong in this matchup. Because they don't really have much exile stuff to get rid of it. So I think we're just going to slam the Ronus here. Company is also a great draw as well. Just need to try and hit our 4th land here if possible. Oh wow, they have a Hook Downfall. Okay, I mean that's annoying. That's pretty much the only card that can deal with Ronus outside of like Meathook Massacre or something. Okay, and Bloodchief's Thirst. So that's decent interaction, but they're already down to 2 cards. Okay, we did hit our 3rd land. Unfortunate that it's a tap land. And Pack Leader, you know, this is a spot where, like I was saying, Pack Leader isn't great because they can just trade with the Blood Tithe Harvester. So yeah, I definitely should have kept an Ooze instead of Pack Leader. I was just sideboarding too quickly there, I think. If they don't kill the Mystic here, we get to Company, which is really nice. Okay, they have a 2nd Blood Tithe Harvester, sure. Okay, another Company's pretty sick. Just going to pass here, obviously. I mean, it very easily telegraphs that we have the Company here, but wow, they just attack. That is a brave attack. Okay, we only hit 1 thing. That kind of sucks. But at least we get to eat one of these Blood Tithe Harvesters here. Oh, Noxious Grasp. Okay. I mean, that's kind of scary because they are getting ahead on tempo here. Okay, another land, but it's a tap land. I think we just have to play that as a land and just pass again here. Company again. But yeah, that was a risky attack. That makes me think they probably have another piece of removal because letting us Company, I guess they feel like they just have to pressure here. That's the only way they're going to win the game. Okay, that's a much better Company now. So now we just get to eat both of the Harvesters unless they have another removal spell. Okay, so they did have 2 bits of removal. That makes more sense. And I guess from their point of view, they feel like their only way of winning it from this point is just trying to win on tempo, but... And we are down to 5, to be fair. Okay, they did have a Fatal Push as well, sure. But I think we've definitely stabilised here at this point. So we can just play Lovestruck Beast and Pack Leader. And I think we can afford to attack with the 1/1. We're not ever really going to be blocking with it. And now they're in a tough spot. Even though they've got us down to 5, you know, and they do have decent reach. They've got, you know, Stomp on Bone Crusher Giant that can deal direct damage. But I think we've, you know, our creatures are so big, they're not really going to be able to force through damage here very easily anyway. So they can kill the Pack Leader. It looks like they are, yeah. So they kill the Pack Leader with the Harvester. Okay, they just played Chandra. Interesting.
I'm the best fired football. Today's
But we can just cleanly kill the Chandra with the Bone Crusher Giant. So we'll just do that. And then I'm going to keep the 1/1s back on defense because they've obviously got that Den of the Bugbear over there. That is one way we could potentially lose if we get too greedy. So I'm going to play somewhat carefully here. We are down to 3 life. And, you know, even taking a single point of damage can be dangerous here because of Bone Crusher Giant. And Chandra as well, I guess. So, okay. So they've got a Hive as well. So I think we're probably safe here to fire up Lair and attack with the Lovestruck Beasts as well. And then we've got 3 1/1s back, so even if they fire up Hive, we're definitely safe. You know, even if they had an extra land and they drew Fatal Push, we're still safe there. And now we put them down to 6, and they can't even really afford to attack here, so they need like Meathook Massacre, and even then we can fire up Lair to make it a 1/1. So I think we should win here. Unless they have a way to deal 3 directly. Let's see what they drew. They're mousing over the 1/1s. Maybe they did draw a Meathook, but again, they would go up to 9. We make Lair into a 1/1 and just attack in for 10. So, oh, they had Shatterskull. Okay, sick. Yeah, we got there. Nice.